Hey everyone, and welcome back to Cosmic Currents. Today we're talking about a sign that often gets labeled as the most spiritual of the zodiac, and we're going to unpack whether that's a genuine connection to the divine, or just a masterful act of escapist branding. We're diving deep into the paradox of Pisces, the final, most mysterious sign of the zodiac, and exploring the tension between their ethereal reputation and the very human need to sometimes just check out. Have you ever felt like you're too sensitive for this world? Like you just don't quite fit into the harsh realities of daily life? That's a feeling a lot of people, especially those with strong Piscean energy, can relate to. It's that deep-seated yearning for something more, for a reality that feels softer, kinder, and more aligned with the soul. Before we dive into the stars, if you're finding these insights helpful, please hit that like and subscribe button. It helps this energy reach more people who need it. And while you're at it, drop a comment below and tell me a question you're asking the universe right now. All right. Find a comfortable spot and let's align our energy with the cosmos. You see, the perception of Pisces as inherently spiritual is a deeply rooted idea, and it's not without reason. After all, this is a sign ruled by Neptune, the planet of dreams, illusions, and the divine. And before Neptune's discovery, Pisces was ruled by Jupiter, the planet of expansion and higher truths. So you have this double whammy of cosmic influence that seems to point directly toward a non-physical, transcendent reality. You'll often find that Pisceans speak a language that is less about logic and more about intuition. They can perceive the subtle energies in a room, feel the emotional undercurrents of a conversation, and often have a rich, complex inner world that's far more engaging than what's happening on the surface. The spiritual label fits this bill perfectly. It suggests a person who is connected, intuitive, and perhaps even a little mystical. But here's the paradox we're here to explore today. Does that connection to something bigger always stem from a place of spiritual alignment? Or can it sometimes be a form of self-preservation? Is the Piscean's tendency to dissolve boundaries an act of universal love? Or is it a subconscious desire to escape the confines of their own ego and the pressures of the material world? The line can be incredibly thin, and for a Pisces, it's often invisible. You may find yourself naturally drawn to meditation, to art, to music, or to any practice that allows you to transcend the everyday. This is your soul's natural inclination to dissolve the barriers between you and the collective consciousness. But what happens when the external world becomes too loud, too abrasive, or too overwhelming? Do you use these tools for spiritual growth? Or do you use them as an escape hatch? A way to float away from problems you don't feel equipped to handle? This is a crucial question, because true spirituality isn't about escaping reality. It's about fully embracing it, the good, the bad, and the ugly, with a deeper understanding. So, the core insight we're beginning with today is this. Pisces' spiritual nature is not a given. It's a potential. The power lies in the conscious choice to engage with that ethereal energy for purpose and connection, rather than for a retreat into fantasy. You can either use your intuition to guide you through the real world, or you can let your imagination create an entirely new one that you live in. The former is a path to profound wisdom. The latter can be a path to isolation. Think about a time when you felt completely overwhelmed, and instead of facing the problem, you binge-watched a series, scrolled mindlessly on your phone, or lost yourself in a book. This isn't a judgment. It's a simple observation of a very human coping mechanism. For a Pisces, this tendency can be amplified because their escape isn't just a mental act. It's a natural return to their watery, boundless state. The real spiritual challenge, then, is to stay present, to anchor that vast, boundless energy in a way that serves both you and the world around you. So, here's a thought-provoking question for you to ponder. In what areas of your life are you mistaking a need for spiritual connection for a simple desire to escape? That natural tendency toward a boundless state is a direct result of Pisces' elemental nature. You are a water sign, and not just any water. You are the ocean, the collective unconscious, the deep sea where all things dissolve and blend. This is why you may feel like you're not so much an individual with clear-cut boundaries, as you are a part of a larger whole. Your ruler, Neptune, is the planet of oceanic oneness and sublime dissolution. It governs the parts of our lives that are ethereal, imaginative, and deeply emotional. Neptune dissolves the ego, blurring the lines between you and everyone else. And for a Pisces, this can be a beautiful, overwhelming, and sometimes terrifying experience. You walk through the world like an open vessel, a sponge, absorbing not just the joy and light from others, but their pain, their fears, and their unsaid anxieties. This isn't a flaw, it's the core of your energetic makeup. The spiritual insight here is to understand that your sensitivity isn't a weakness, it's your greatest gift. It's the key to your intuition, your empathy, and your capacity for unconditional love. You can walk into a room and instantly feel the mood. sensing tension where others see smiles, or feeling a deep connection to a stranger's sorrow. This is because your energy field is porous. You don't need to be told what's wrong. You can feel it. It's like having a built-in emotional sonar. But this also means you need to be incredibly mindful of who and what you surround yourself with. If you spend time with people who are constantly negative or draining, you'll find that their energy sticks to you and it can be hard to shake off. You might feel heavy, tired, or inexplicably sad, and you might not even realize it's not your own emotion. A relatable example is the difference between a lake and an ocean. A lake has clear, definable shores. It has its own ecosystem, its own specific temperature and currents. But the ocean is vast and interconnected with all other oceans. Its currents are influenced by the moon, by global temperatures, and by the flow of rivers from all corners of the world. You, with your Piscean energy, are the ocean. You are inherently linked to the greater collective, and your feelings are often a reflection of the emotional tides of humanity. You may feel a deep sense of sadness on a day when there's a collective tragedy, even if you have no personal connection to it. This is your soul registering the pain of the collective. The challenge, and the spiritual work, is learning how to navigate these waters without drowning. You have to learn how to distinguish between your own feelings and the feelings of others. A lot of Pisceans mistakenly believe that their purpose is to carry the emotional burdens of everyone around them. But this is a path to burnout and resentment. The true spiritual practice is to feel the emotion, acknowledge it, and then allow it to pass through you, without claiming it as your own. You are a channel, not a container. Think of it like a beautiful, clear river. The water flows, carrying with it leaves dirt and debris, but the river itself isn't dirty. It simply carries the debris on its journey to the sea. This is a skill that takes practice, and it starts with self-awareness. When you feel a sudden shift in your mood or a wave of emotion that doesn't seem to have a cause, take a moment to pause. Ask yourself, is this mine? This simple question can be a powerful tool for discernment. It helps you create a conscious boundary where your natural state is to have none. You are not meant to absorb and hold on to everything you encounter. You are meant to be a conduit for universal energy. So, if you're feeling overwhelmed, instead of retreating into your shell, try a grounding exercise, like walking barefoot on the earth or spending time near a body of water. Connect with nature to find your center. This helps you anchor your energy in your own physical body so that you can better navigate the invisible emotional currents that flow through the world. So, with that in mind, I want you to ask yourself a question. What is one emotional burden you are currently carrying that you suspect might not actually be yours? That burden you just identified, it likely comes from a place of deep, unconditional compassion. This is another core spiritual insight of the Piscean archetype. Compassion isn't a passive feeling, it's a powerful force. While other signs might approach compassion with a sense of duty or intellectual understanding, for you, it's an innate, visceral experience. You feel the pain of others as if it were your own, and this allows you to connect on a level that bypasses logic and language. It's the reason why you can be such a powerful healer, a supportive friend, or a truly empathetic presence in the world. This is your superpower. But here's where the spiritual challenge comes in. How do you use this superpower without letting it deplete you? Your compassion can turn into martyrdom if you don't set boundaries. You may find yourself constantly giving, pouring from an empty cup, and then resenting those you are trying to help. This happens when you mistake your capacity for empathy with a responsibility to fix everyone else's problems. Remember that last full moon reading we did, where we talked about the difference between holding space and carrying a burden? This is exactly that. Holding space means being present for someone, offering them a non-judgmental container for their feelings without trying to solve everything for them. Carrying a burden means taking on their pain as your own, believing that you are responsible for their emotional state. Think about a time when a friend was going through a tough time. A less empathetic person might offer a quick piece of advice, a platitude, or a suggestion to cheer up. But you, with your watery nature, sit with them in the mud. You feel the sting of their hurt and the weight of their sorrow. This is a beautiful and sacred act. But if you walk away from that conversation feeling emotionally exhausted and drained, it means you've crossed the line from holding space to carrying a burden. The spiritual principle here is that true compassion isn't about saving others. It's about connecting with them in a way that empowers them to save themselves. You are there to reflect their own inner light back to them, to remind them of their own strength and resilience. A great real-world example of this is a hospital chaplain or a grief counselor. These are people who are constantly in the presence of immense pain and suffering, yet they don't take it home with them every day. They have learned to create a conscious boundary, to offer their heart and their presence without sacrificing their own well-being. They understand that their job isn't to take on the pain, but to be a steady, loving presence in the midst of it. This is the goal for you. 2. You are not a savior. You are a channel of love and healing. This is why setting energetic boundaries is not a selfish act for a Pisces. It's a spiritual necessity. It's an act of self-love that says, I am a powerful vessel of compassion, and to keep that vessel full, I must protect my own energy. This might look like telling a friend you're not in the right headspace for a heavy conversation, or simply taking time for yourself after a difficult interaction to cleanse your aura. You might try smudging your space, taking a salt bath, or visualizing a protective shield of light around you. These aren't just New Age rituals. They are practical tools for a soul that feels everything so deeply. So, here, a thought-provoking question for you to consider. Where in your life are you mistaking a need to be compassionate for a need to be a martyr? Where are you giving so much of yourself that you have nothing left to give? That martyr complex we just talked about is often a symptom of something else, an over-reliance on your rich inner world. This is the realm of the dream weaver, a core Piscean archetype. You don't just have dreams when you sleep. You live in a perpetual state of dreaming. Your imagination is not a side project. It's a primary source of reality. Ruled by Neptune, the planet of fantasy and the subconscious, you have an unparalleled ability to access this fluid symbolic space. This is where your creativity, your intuition, and your deepest insights reside. You can envision worlds that don't yet exist, connect with archetypes and symbols, and find meaning in the most mundane of circumstances. This is the source of your artistic gifts. Whether you're a painter, a musician, a poet, or a storyteller, you can tap into a well of inspiration that seems to have no bottom. The spiritual principle here is that your vivid inner world is not just a form of entertainment, it's a form of prayer, a way of communing with the divine. When you get lost in a creative project, you are in a state of flow, a meditative trance where you are no longer separate from the thing you are creating. You are a channel for a higher energy, and the art that emerges is a physical manifestation of a spiritual experience. Think of a musician who loses track of time while playing, or a writer who feels as though the words are being channeled through them. That's the Pisces energy at work, dissolving the boundary between self and source. A great real-world example of this is the concept of a vision board, or creative visualization. While many people use this as a simple tool for goal setting, for a Pisces, it's a powerful spiritual practice. You don't just put pictures on a board and hope for the best. You are actively engaging with your subconscious mind, creating a symbolic representation of the reality you want to manifest. You are dreaming your future into being. This is a potent form of magic, a way of using your natural imaginative gifts to co-create with the universe. However, just as with all your gifts, there's a shadow side to this. Your ability to get lost in a dream can also become a way to escape from the harshness of reality. When the real world feels too difficult, too demanding, or too painful, you may instinctively retreat into your vivid fantasy world. You might lose yourself in books, movies, video games, or even daydreams, not for creative inspiration but as a form of avoidance. This is the difference between using your imagination as a tool and using it as a prison. When your imagination becomes a prison, you can lose touch with the very real people and problems that need your attention. You can start to confuse fantasy with reality, and the people in your life can feel like they're competing with a ghost. The spiritual work is to become a conscious dream weaver. This means learning to distinguish between a productive, creative journey and a self-soothing, escapist detour. How do you know the difference? A creative journey feels expansive, energizing, and ultimately connects you more deeply with the world. An escapist detour feels stagnant, isolating, and ultimately leaves you feeling more disconnected than you were before. The key is to anchor your dreams in action. Don't just dream about a better world. Take one small step toward making it a reality. Don't just imagine yourself as a healer. Offer a listening ear to a friend. So, here, a thought-provoking question for you to ponder. Are your daydreams and creative pursuits a bridge to a better reality, or a wall you hide behind to avoid the one you're currently in? That tendency to dissolve into a dream world, or to absorb the feelings of others, is directly linked to the spiritual principle of unity. For many, the idea that we are all interconnected is a beautiful but abstract concept. For a Pisces, it's a lived reality. You naturally grasp that the illusion of separateness is just that, an illusion. You see through the ego's neat little boxes of me and you and perceive the underlying current that connects all of life. This is why you can feel such a profound and instantaneous connection to a stranger, or why you are so drawn to global issues and humanitarian causes. Your soul understands that the suffering of one is the suffering of all. This spiritual insight is at the very heart of your nature. You are constantly receiving information about the whole, not just the individual parts. You can sense the emotional temperature of the planet, the subtle shifts in consciousness, and the collective yearning for connection. This is a profound and beautiful gift. It makes you a natural healer, a mystic, and an artist who can channel the collective experience. When you create art, you aren't just expressing yourself. You are giving voice to the voiceless parts of humanity. When you offer comfort, you aren't just helping one person, you are contributing to the healing of the whole. Consider a real-world example, an artist who paints a powerful mural that speaks to a community's struggle and triumph. This artist isn't just painting a picture, they're creating a shared experience, a public manifestation of a collective emotion. This is a deeply Piscean act, a way of using your intuitive understanding of unity to bring people together. Your gift is to feel the invisible and make it visible. You can sense the spiritual and emotional bonds that tie us all together, and you can find a way to express that feeling. However, your constant awareness of this interconnectedness can also be your biggest challenge. Because you see and feel the lack of boundaries, you can struggle to establish them for yourself. If you truly believe I am you and you are me, then where does your responsibility end and another person's begin? This is where your spiritual understanding can turn into a personal sacrifice. You might give away all your energy, your time, and your resources because you genuinely feel that you are not separate from the person in need. But this isn't true compassion. It's a form of martyrdom, as we discussed. The spiritual work for you is to hold the paradox of unity and individuality. You can know that we are all one, while also understanding that you have a unique and individual journey to walk. Your mission is not to dissolve entirely into the collective, but to anchor your own unique light within it. Think of it like a beautiful tapestry. You are a single, shining thread. And while you are interconnected with every other thread, you still have your own unique color and place. Without you, the tapestry would not be complete. So, here's a thought-provoking question for you to reflect on. How can you honor the sacred truth of unity without sacrificing your own unique individual path and energy? That acceptance of unity, that surrender to the collective flow, brings us to a core spiritual principle for Pisces, the art of surrender. While other signs might find comfort in control, plans, and logical progression, your soul finds its peace in letting go. You understand that life is not a straight line, but a winding river, and your greatest strength comes from flowing with the current rather than fighting against it. You intuitively know that there are forces at play far greater than your individual will, and true freedom comes from aligning with those forces. This is what spiritual surrender is all about. It's not giving up, it's giving over. It's a trust in the universe, a belief that the destination will reveal itself if you just keep moving with faith. This is a profoundly powerful practice, and it is at the heart of many spiritual traditions. Think of the concept of letting go and letting God, or the meditative practice of releasing all thoughts and simply being. For a Pisces, this isn't a practice you have to learn. It's a state you often return to naturally. When you're not trying to force an outcome, you'll find that synchronicities appear, that the right people show up at the right time, and that solutions to problems seem to materialize out of thin air. This is because you are in a state of alignment, no longer blocking the flow of universal energy with your personal ego. A relatable example of this is a time when you had a problem you couldn't solve. Maybe it was a creative block, a personal conflict, or a professional roadblock. You tried every angle, pushed every button, and nothing worked. So, you finally gave up, not out of defeat, but out of exhaustion. You took a break, went for a walk, or simply stopped thinking about it. And in that moment of surrender, the answer popped into your head, clear as day. That wasn't a coincidence. That was the universe responding to your surrender. You stopped trying to control the outcome, and in doing so, you created the space for a new solution to emerge. But here's the shadow side. For a Pisces, surrender can also become resignation. There's a fine line between a beautiful, trusting surrender and a passive, helpless giving up. Resignation is when you give up, not because you trust the process, but because you feel powerless. It's a passive acceptance of your circumstances without any faith that things can or will get better. This can lead to a sense of victimhood where you feel like life is just happening to you and you have no say in the matter. You might say things like, "That's just the way it is," or "I can't do anything about it." Not out of spiritual acceptance, but out of a deep-seated feeling of helplessness. The spiritual work is to consciously choose surrender, not as an excuse to avoid action, but as a way to find the most aligned and effortless path forward. Surrender is an active choice, a state of being that requires immense faith and courage. It's about doing what you can and then releasing the outcome. It's about knowing when to act and when to simply allow. So, before you decide to give up on something, take a moment to ask yourself this thought-provoking question. Is this surrender or is this resignation? Are you trusting the river or are you simply lying in the mud? That fine line between surrender and resignation brings us to a topic that is often misunderstood when it comes to Pisces: escapism. This word is almost always used with a negative connotation, conjuring images of someone who is weak, avoidant, or simply unable to face reality. But for a Pisces, escapism isn't just a flaw. It's a deeply ingrained coping mechanism, born from a spiritual need to retreat from overwhelming stimuli. The spiritual insight here is to reframe escapism, not as a character defect, but as a natural, protective response for a highly sensitive soul. You see, your porous energy field, that which allows you to feel the collective and dissolve into unity, also makes you incredibly vulnerable. The sheer volume of information, emotion, and harsh realities in the world can be too much to bear. It's like a sponge trying to soak up an entire ocean. So, what do? You retreat. You find a quiet, safe space where you can wring yourself out and recharge. This might look like losing yourself in a book, a movie, a video game, or even a period of deep sleep. This is not laziness. It's a form of spiritual preservation. It's your soul saying, I need to go offline for a while to process and recalibrate. Think of a real-world example, the artist who needs to retreat to their studio for days on end to create, or the highly empathetic person who needs to go on a solo hike in nature to feel whole again after a draining week of social interaction. This isn't them running from life. It's them reconnecting with their inner source so they can show up for life with more integrity. For you, escapism is often a form of self-care. It's a way of saying no to the world so you can say yes to yourself. However, as with all Piscean tendencies, there's a shadow side. This protective mechanism can turn into a permanent residence. When you retreat so often and for so long that you stop engaging with the world, your escapism becomes a prison rather than a sanctuary. You may start to confuse your fantasies with reality, as we talked about, or you may avoid confronting problems until they become too big to ignore. This is when escapism moves from being a spiritual necessity to a self-sabotaging habit. The key difference is the intention behind the act. Are you escaping to heal and return, or are you escaping to disappear? The spiritual work is to become mindful of your escapist tendencies. When you feel the pull to retreat, honor it. Take the time you need. But before you do, set a conscious intention to return. Tell yourself, I am going to recharge for 2 hours, and then I will come back to this problem with a renewed perspective. This small act of intention transforms the experience. It turns a reactive habit into a proactive spiritual practice. It turns a flight from reality into a conscious journey inward. So, here's a thought-provoking question for you to consider. What is one small, conscious step you can take today to transform your escapist tendencies from an unconscious habit into a deliberate act of self-care? That tendency to retreat, while often a form of self-preservation, is also a reflection of what we might call the shadow of the fish. Every sign has a shadow side, those parts of ourselves we'd rather not look at. For Pisces, that shadow is often related to a feeling of powerlessness. Because your natural state is to dissolve boundaries, you can easily fall into the trap of victimhood, believing that you are a helpless pawn in a game of fate. This can manifest as a feeling that everyone is taking advantage of you, that you're constantly misunderstood, or that life is just happening to you and you have no say in the matter. This feeling is not a spiritual truth. It's a self-limiting belief born from a lack of groundedness and a surrender to resignation instead of trust. The spiritual insight here is that your ultimate power lies in your ability to choose your response to your circumstances. You are not a victim of the cosmic currents. You are a co-creator with them. You can't control what happens to you, but you can always control your perception and your reaction. The shadow of the martyr, which we've touched on, is part of this victim complex. When you feel helpless, you might subconsciously seek out situations where you can be the one who sacrifices, because it gives you a sense of purpose and importance, even if it's not a healthy one. This is a subtle form of self-deception, a way of feeling powerful by being the one who suffers. Consider the real-world example of a person who is constantly giving to their friends and family, but secretly resents them for not giving back. They might complain that no one appreciates their efforts or that they are always the one doing the work. This is the shadow side of Piscean generosity. Instead of giving from a place of love and abundance, they are giving from a place of neediness, subconsciously hoping for validation or a sense of control. The act of giving becomes a transactional one, and when their unconscious expectations aren't met, they retreat into a victim narrative. To confront this shadow, you must be willing to look at your own motivations. When you feel a wave of self-pity or resentment, instead of indulging it, ask yourself, what is my role in this situation? How have I given my power away? This is not about blaming yourself. It's about reclaiming your agency. You are not a helpless fish caught in a net. You are the vast, intelligent ocean. You have the power to create your own currents and to choose where you want to go. Confronting this shadow means taking responsibility for your own emotional well-being, even if it feels uncomfortable. It means learning to say no, even when you feel a pull to say yes. The spiritual work is to shift your mindset from happening to me to happening for me. You can choose to see every challenge not as a burden, but as a lesson, a chance to grow and evolve. This is a monumental shift, and it requires you to actively choose faith over fear and empowerment over victim. So, here's a thought-provoking question for you to reflect on. In what area of your life have you been acting as a victim? And what is one small step you can take today to reclaim your power? That process of reclaiming your power is deeply connected to your next spiritual principle, the sacred act of creation. As a Pisces, your creativity isn't a hobby, it's a form of prayer, a way of channeling the vast, formless energy of the universe into something tangible and beautiful. You are a natural artist, and this doesn't just mean painting or music. It means you can create beauty and meaning in anything you do, from arranging a bouquet of flowers, to telling a compelling story, to simply curating a sacred space in your home. Your soul's purpose is to bring the divine into the material world, and you do this through acts of creation. The spiritual insight here is to recognize that your creative impulses are direct messages from your soul. When you feel a sudden urge to write a poem, or hum a melody, or redecorate your room, that's not just a whim. It's your higher self nudging you toward a state of alignment and flow. Creativity is the antidote to the feeling of powerlessness we just discussed. When you are creating, you are not a victim of circumstance. You are an active participant in shaping reality. You are literally making something out of nothing, which is one of the most powerful and transformative things a human can do. Think of a real-world example, the baker who kneads dough with intention and love. For them, it's not just a culinary process, it's a sacred act. They are transforming simple ingredients, flour, water, yeast, to nourishment. They are using their hands to create something that will bring joy and sustenance to others. This is a deeply Piscean act, a way of infusing the mundane with divine purpose. You can do this in your own life with any task, no matter how small. When you wash the dishes, you can do it with a sense of mindfulness and gratitude, creating a moment of peace and cleanliness. When you write an email, you can do so with the intention of communicating with clarity and kindness. However, the shadow side of this is that your creative process can also be an echo chamber of escapism. You can become so obsessed with your artistic vision that you ignore the practical needs of your life. You might spend days working on a painting and neglect your bills, or lose yourself in a story you're writing and forget to eat. This is where your gifts of imagination can turn on you, becoming a way to avoid the messy realities of life rather than a way to infuse them with beauty. The key is to integrate your creativity, not separate it from your life. The spiritual work is to see your creativity not as an indulgence but as an essential part of your well-being. It is as important as eating and sleeping. It is what connects you to your soul. But you must also learn to bring that creative energy back into the world. To share your creations with others and to use your imagination to solve real-world problems, your unique gift is the ability to envision a better world. Your responsibility is to take one small step to make that vision a reality. So, here's a thought-provoking question for you to consider. What is one small creative act you can perform today? Not for a project or for a deadline, but simply to reconnect with your soul. That connection to your creative self is rooted in your incredible capacity for empathy, which, as we've discussed, is a double-edged sword. On one hand, your empathy is a superpower that allows you to connect with others on a deeply spiritual level, to feel what they feel, and to offer them a kind of unconditional love that bypasses the ego. You can be the friend who knows exactly what to say, the healer whose touch is intuitively comforting, or the artist whose work moves people to tears because you've tapped into a universal truth. This is the beautiful, transcendent side of your gift. The spiritual principle at play here is that true empathy is a form of spiritual resonance. It's not just about intellectually understanding someone's pain. It's about matching their energetic frequency and allowing them to feel seen, heard, and validated on a soul level. You can do this with a simple look, a gentle hand on the shoulder, or a moment of quiet presence. You are a mirror for the souls of others, reflecting their inner state back to them with love and non-judgment. This is a sacred act of service, and it is a path to profound spiritual connection. Consider the real-world example of a physical therapist who doesn't just focus on the muscles and bones, but can also intuitively sense the emotional tension held in their client's body. They can feel the fear, the grief, or the anger that is causing the physical pain, and they can help their client release it. This is a Piscean gift at work, using empathy to heal on a level that goes beyond the physical. It's an understanding that the body and the soul are one, and that true healing requires addressing both. However, the shadow side of this is that your empathy can also be a heavy burden. Because you don't have strong energetic boundaries, you can easily become a sponge for the pain of others. You might take on their anxiety, their depression, or their anger, believing that you are helping them when in reality, you are just absorbing their energy. This is not empathy. This is what we might call energetic entanglement. It's a state where you've become so intertwined with another person's energy that you've lost your own sense of self. This can lead to exhaustion, emotional burnout, and a feeling that you're constantly being pulled in a million different directions. The spiritual work is to learn the art of disentanglement, This is a daily practice of checking in with yourself and asking, is this mine? When you feel a sudden wave of sadness or anger, instead of immediately identifying with it, pause and create a moment of space. You can use visualization to help with this. Imagine a beautiful, clear waterfall of light washing over you, cleansing you of any energy that is not your own. Or you can simply shake your body, jump up and down, or stomp your feet to physically release the energy. You must learn to honor your empathy while also protecting your own energy. True compassion is not about carrying another person's burden. It is about shining a light on their path so they can carry their own. So, here, a thought-provoking question for you to consider. What is one small step you can take today to honor your empathy without allowing it to drain you? That act of disentanglement, the conscious decision to separate your energy from others, is the first step toward connecting with a more profound source of guidance, your higher self. Because you are so naturally attuned to the collective, it can be easy to lose sight of your own unique inner voice. You may find yourself constantly asking for advice from others or feeling paralyzed by indecision because you are trying to process so many different energetic inputs at once. The spiritual insight here is to understand that your fluidity is not meant to make you a puppet of external energies. It's meant to make you a direct conduit for divine or universal wisdom. Your higher self is that part of you that is connected to the whole, the part that knows your soul's purpose and is not swayed by the anxieties of the ego. For a Pisces, this connection is often accessed through your intuition. Those gut feelings or flashes of insight that come out of nowhere. You may have a strong sense of a person's character upon meeting them, or you may just know the answer to a problem without being able to explain why. This is your higher self speaking to you through your natural intuitive channels. The spiritual work is to learn to trust this voice above all others. A relatable example of this is a time when you had a strong gut feeling about a decision, and you ignored it because a friend or family member told you to do something else. Maybe you were considering a new job and your intuition told you it wasn't the right fit, but a well-meaning loved one convinced you to take it anyway. When things didn't work out, you were left with the feeling of, I knew I should have listened to myself. This isn't just a simple mistake, it's a spiritual lesson. It's the universe reminding you that your most accurate GPS is not external, it's internal. However, the shadow side of this is that your connection to the divine can be easily mistaken for wishful thinking or fantasy. Because you are so good at creating elaborate inner worlds, you can sometimes convince yourself that a delusion is a divine message. For example, you might have a fantasy about a relationship and convince yourself that it's destined to happen, even when all the real-world signs are pointing in the opposite direction. This is not your higher self speaking. This is your ego using your imaginative gifts to create an escape from reality. The key to discerning the difference is how the message makes you feel. A message from your higher self will feel expansive, loving, and will lead to growth, even if it's challenging. A message from the ego will often feel possessive, desperate, or will be focused on a specific non-negotiable outcome. The spiritual work is to create a conscious practice of connecting with your higher self. This might look like daily meditation, journaling, or simply taking a moment of silence to ask for guidance before making a decision. The more you practice, the more you will learn to recognize the subtle, quiet voice of your intuition over the loud, demanding voice of your ego. The goal is to become an open channel, not a filter for the collective, but a clear vessel for your own unique divine guidance. So, here, a thought-provoking question for you to consider. What is one small step you can take today to honor your intuition and build a stronger relationship with your higher self? That connection to your higher self is what will ultimately lead you toward your highest and most fulfilling path, the path of service. For a Pisces, this isn't a moral obligation, it's a soul-deep calling. Your natural urge to dissolve boundaries and connect with the collective is not meant for your own personal enlightenment alone. It's meant to be a gift you share with the world. You are a natural-born healer, an artist, a humanitarian, and a compassionate presence. Your purpose is to use your unique gifts, your empathy, your intuition, your creativity, to alleviate suffering and bring more love and light into the world. The spiritual principle here is that true spiritual fulfillment is found not in accumulation but in contribution. When you are giving from a place of genuine compassion and abundance, you are not only helping others, you are also aligning with your deepest self. This is why so many people with strong Piscean energy are drawn to professions that involve helping others. Whether it's as a nurse, a therapist, an artist, a teacher, or a volunteer, it's not just a job. It's a way of life, a way of expressing your soul's purpose. A relatable example of this is the person who spends their Saturday morning volunteering at an animal shelter. For them, it's not a chore. It's a source of profound joy. They feel a deep connection to the animals they are helping, and they feel a sense of purpose that goes beyond their daily routine. This is a powerful yet simple act of service. It's an act of giving that requires no recognition, no applause, and no reward. It is a pure, unconditional expression of love. However, the shadow side of this is that your path of service can become a form of self-sacrifice. We've touched on this before, but it's worth revisiting here. If you are serving others out of a sense of obligation or guilt, you are not on the path of service. You are on the path of martyrdom. When you are giving from a place of emptiness, your actions are no longer an expression of love, but a desperate attempt to feel worthy. This can lead to resentment, burnout, and a feeling that you are being taken for granted. This is not the universe's plan for you. The universe wants you to be a vessel of light, not a martyr. The spiritual work is to find a way to serve that feels joyful and fulfilling, not draining. This means learning to say no to things that don't align with your energy, and learning to set boundaries so you can continue to give without sacrificing yourself. It also means recognizing that you don't have to save the entire world. You can start with one small act of kindness, one person you help, one moment of compassion. The ripple effect of these small acts is far more powerful than you can imagine. So, here's a thought-provoking question for you to consider. What is one small act of service you can perform today that will not only help someone else, but also fill your own cup? That path of service, and indeed every aspect of your Piscean journey, requires a fundamental spiritual practice that can feel counterintuitive, grounding. You are an ocean of energy, and your natural inclination is to flow, to be formless, to dissolve into the collective. But just as the ocean needs the shoreline to define itself, you need to anchor your energy in the physical world. Without grounding, your spiritual insights can feel unmoored and your beautiful, compassionate nature can become overwhelming. The spiritual insight here is that you don't have to lose your fluid nature to become grounded. You simply need to create a conscious connection to the physical world, to the here and now. Think of it this way. Your head is in the clouds where all the divine information and inspiration live. Your heart is in the sea, where all the collective emotions and compassion reside. But your feet must be firmly planted on the earth. This connection to the earth is what allows you to translate your spiritual insights into tangible action. It's what allows you to offer your compassion in a way that is truly helpful, rather than just energetically draining. A lack of grounding is why you might feel spacey, forgetful, or a little bit out of it. It's a sign that your energy is not in your body. A real-world example of this is the person who has a beautiful idea for a project, a podcast, a book, a business, but never gets around to writing it down or taking the first step. They are full of creative energy and inspiration, but it never translates into action because they are not grounded. They are so busy dreaming of the finished product that they can't connect with the mundane, practical steps of getting there. The spiritual work is to bring your head and your heart down to earth, to create a physical anchor for your spiritual energy. You can do this through simple, practical practices. One of the most powerful grounding tools for a Pisces is a conscious connection with nature. Go outside and walk barefoot on the grass. Feel the earth beneath your feet. Feel the sun on your skin. Touch a tree. These simple acts are a way of telling your soul, I am here. I am in this body. I am in this moment. Another powerful tool is working with your hands. Gardening, cooking, knitting, or even just doing the dishes with mindfulness can help you anchor your energy. These acts require you to be present and to focus on the physical sensation of what you are doing. The shadow side of this is that you may resist grounding because it feels too restrictive, too limiting. You may feel like it stifles your spiritual or creative flow. You may think, I don't have time for this, or this is too boring. But remember, grounding is not about putting a fence around your spiritual nature. It's about building a strong foundation for it. A tree with shallow roots will be toppled by the slightest wind, but a tree with deep, strong roots can sway and bend in the storm without breaking. You are that tree. Your spiritual flow is what makes you beautiful and unique, but your grounding is what makes you strong. So, here's a thought-provoking question for you to consider. What is one small, physical act you can do today to anchor your energy and connect with the present moment? That struggle to get grounded often stems from a deeper challenge for you, facing the world of form. As a being of pure feeling and spirit, the physical material world can feel foreign and even hostile. This is where your spiritual nature clashes with daily reality. You can have a profound spiritual experience during meditation, feeling a sense of oneness with all life, and then struggle to fill out a simple form, pay a bill on time, or remember where you left your keys. This isn't because you're lazy or unintelligent. It's because your mind and soul are often operating on a different frequency than the mundane world requires. The spiritual insight here is that the material world is not a lesser reality, it's a sacred one. The physical realm is where our spiritual lessons are lived out, where our compassion is put to the test, and where our creativity takes form. For a Pisces, true spirituality isn't about escaping the world of form, it's about infusing it with spirit. It's about bringing the divine into the details of your life. The spiritual work is to find a way to honor your ethereal nature while also engaging with the practicalities of being human. Consider the real-world example of a beautiful spiritual person who is constantly broke. They have amazing ideas and a heart of gold, but they can't seem to hold down a job or manage their money. This isn't a lack of abundance. It's a lack of groundedness. They are so focused on the spiritual realm that they have neglected the material one, and as a result, they are living in a constant state of anxiety and lack. The universe is trying to teach them that spiritual prosperity and material prosperity are not separate. They are two sides of the same coin. You can't manifest abundance if you're not willing to engage with the physical world. The shadow side of this is your tendency to see the mundane as a burden and to retreat from it. You may feel overwhelmed by chores, paperwork, or the demands of a structured schedule. You might procrastinate endlessly or avoid situations that require a high degree of organization and planning. This is where your escapism can take a particularly damaging form, because you are not just escaping to recharge. You are escaping to avoid your responsibilities. This can lead to a cycle of guilt and shame where you feel bad for not being normal or responsible. The spiritual work is to change your perception. Instead of seeing mundane tasks as a burden, try to see them as a form of spiritual practice. When you do the dishes, you are creating order out of chaos. When you pay a bill, you are honoring your relationship with money and the flow of energy. When you fill out a form, you are affirming your place in the world. You can turn every single mundane act into a meditation, a way of bringing your consciousness into the present moment. This doesn't mean you have to love it, but it does mean you can find a way to do it with more peace and less resistance. So, here's a thought-provoking question for you to consider. What is one mundane task you can choose to approach today? Not as a chore, but as a spiritual practice. That ability to find a deeper purpose in the mundane is a form of mindfulness, and it's a practice that is profoundly linked to the wisdom of silence. For a Pisces, solitude and quiet are not a luxury, they are a spiritual necessity. Your soul is constantly processing a torrent of information: your own feelings, the feelings of others, the whispers of the universe, and the noise of the world. Without periods of silence, you can easily become overwhelmed and lose your connection to your own inner compass. The spiritual insight here is that quiet time is not a form of isolation. It's a sacred practice for recharging, receiving, and integrating. Think of it this way: your mind is like a satellite dish. It's always on, always receiving information from every direction. But if that dish is constantly surrounded by other noise, television, music, conversations, social media, it can't pick up the subtle signals from the divine. It gets overwhelmed with static. The spiritual work is to consciously turn off the external noise so you can tune into the internal wisdom. This is why so many spiritual traditions emphasize meditation, contemplation, and retreat. It's a way of creating a clear channel between you and the universe. A real-world example of this is the person who wakes up a half hour before everyone else just to sit in silence with a cup of tea. Or the one who takes a solitary walk in the woods to clear their head. These people aren't antisocial. They are simply honoring their soul's need for stillness. They understand that without this quiet time, they would not be able to show up for their day with the same level of clarity, patience, or compassion. For a Pisces, this is even more critical because your energy is so porous. You need that time alone to shake off all the energies you've absorbed throughout the day. However, the shadow side of this is that your love of solitude can become a form of avoidance. You can retreat into silence not to recharge but to hide from difficult conversations, challenging situations, or people who make you feel uncomfortable. This is where your desire for peace can turn into a passive-aggressive form of control, where you use your silence to punish others or to avoid confrontation. When you use silence as a weapon, you are no longer in a state of spiritual peace. You are in a state of emotional resistance. This is a subtle but important difference, and for a Pisces, it can be hard to see. The spiritual work is to distinguish between silence as a sanctuary and silence as a prison. You can know the difference by how you feel afterward. A period of spiritual solitude will leave you feeling renewed, clear, and more connected to the world. A period of avoidant silence will leave you feeling more isolated, more resentful, and more stuck. So, before you retreat into silence, ask yourself this thought-provoking question: am I seeking peace, or am I avoiding a problem? That tendency to retreat, whether for spiritual solace or from a place of avoidance, can also be tied to a classic Piscean archetype, the savior. You, with your immense capacity for compassion and your intuitive grasp of collective pain, can easily fall into the trap of believing it's your job to save others. This isn't a malicious act. It's born from a genuine desire to alleviate suffering. You see a person in pain and your natural instinct is to rush in, to take on their burden, and to do whatever you can to fix their problem. The spiritual insight here is that while your impulse to help is a beautiful and pure expression of love, your need to be the hero is an ego-driven trap that will ultimately lead to burnout and disappointment. The spiritual principle at play is that you cannot save another person from their journey. Their pain, their struggles, their lessons, these are all a part of their unique path to spiritual growth. When you try to save them, you are robbing them of the opportunity to learn, to grow, and to find their own inner strength. You are essentially saying, "You are too weak to do this on your own, so I will do it for you." This is not an act of love. It is an act of spiritual arrogance, no matter how well-intentioned. Consider the real-world example of the person who is always trying to fix their friend's dysfunctional relationship. They'll listen for hours, offer endless advice, and maybe even get in the middle of arguments. They do this because they genuinely care, but they are also subconsciously seeking a sense of purpose and validation. They feel powerful when they are being the one who helps. But what happens when the friend doesn't take their advice? What happens when the relationship ends anyway? The would-be savior is left feeling angry, resentful, and like they failed. This is the pain of the savior complex. It's a lose-lose situation. The shadow side of this is that when you are in savior mode, you can attract people who are in a victim state. This is a codependent dynamic where they need you to save them, and you need them to need you. This cycle can be incredibly difficult to break because it feels so good to both of you, but it's not a healthy or spiritual dynamic. It's a game of power and control, not a relationship of love and support. The spiritual work is to shift your mindset from "I must save them" to "I must support them." This means learning the difference between helping and enabling. It means offering a listening ear without offering a solution. It means being a loving presence without taking on the burden. It means trusting that the person you care about has their own inner wisdom and their own strength to find their way. Your purpose is not to be a hero. It is to be a source of unconditional love and a beacon of hope. So, here, a thought-provoking question for you to consider. Where in your life are you trying to save someone, and what would it look like to simply support them instead? That savior complex we just deconstructed is rooted in a misunderstanding of one of your most powerful spiritual tools: vulnerability. Most of the world sees vulnerability as a weakness, an open invitation to be hurt. But for a Pisces, vulnerability is the source of your strength. It's what allows you to dissolve the boundaries between yourself and others, to connect on a soul level, and to experience life in its raw, unfiltered beauty. When you are truly vulnerable, you are not hiding behind a facade of perfection or strength. You are simply being yourself, and that authenticity is a powerful magnet for real, meaningful connection. The spiritual principle here is that vulnerability is a gateway to intimacy. You can't truly connect with another person unless you are willing to show them your true self, imperfections and all. This is why Pisceans, when they are in a healthy state, can form such deep and lasting bonds. You don't just like people, you love them on a soul level. You see their wounds and their light, and you accept them fully. This is a profound and sacred act of love, and it requires immense courage. Think of a real-world example. The friend who is the first to admit when they are struggling. They don't pretend that everything is perfect. They share their sadness or their fear. This act of vulnerability doesn't make them seem weak. It makes them seem incredibly strong and brave. It gives you permission to be vulnerable too, and it creates a safe space for real connection. For a Pisces, this is not a one-time event. It's a way of life. You are constantly in a state of open-heartedness, and that's what makes you so beautiful and so loved. However, the shadow side of this is that your vulnerability can be easily mistaken for helplessness. You may unconsciously use your open heart as a way to get attention, sympathy, or to avoid taking responsibility. You might say things like, "I'm just too sensitive," or "I can't handle this." Not out of a genuine need for support, but as a way to manipulate a situation. This is a subtle form of self-deception, and it can be incredibly damaging to your relationships and to your own self-worth. When you use vulnerability as a crutch, you are no longer in a state of spiritual authenticity. You are in a state of emotional resistance. The spiritual work is to distinguish between authentic vulnerability and performative helplessness. You can tell the difference by how it feels. Authentic vulnerability feels expansive and liberating, even if it's scary. It's an act of courage. Performative helplessness feels constrictive and manipulative. It's an act of control. The key is to be vulnerable from a place of strength, not from a place of weakness. You can say, "I'm hurting," from a place of self-awareness and self-love, and you can say it from a place of self-pity and a desire for attention. The words are the same, but the energy is completely different. So, here, a thought-provoking question for you to consider. Where in your life are you using your vulnerability as a shield rather than a strength? That beautiful, open-hearted vulnerability is the key to your role as a spiritual gateway. You are not just a person who is connected to the spiritual world. You are a bridge between the physical and the non-physical, the mundane and the divine. You have a unique and natural capacity to perceive and interpret non-physical realities. Whether it's through dreams, intuition, or a simple feeling of knowing, your soul understands that there is more to reality than what can be seen, touched, or measured. You are an antenna for cosmic information, and your purpose is to bring that information down to earth and share it with others in a way that is understandable and helpful. The spiritual insight here is to embrace your role as a conduit, not an originator. You are not creating these divine messages. You are receiving them and translating them. This is why you are so drawn to art, music, and storytelling. These are all forms of translation, ways of taking a feeling, a symbol, or a spiritual truth and giving it a physical form. When you feel a deep sense of peace after listening to a piece of music, it's not just a coincidence. It's because the musician, a Piscean in spirit, has translated a divine truth into a song that you can feel with your human ears. A relatable example of this is the person who is a natural medium or psychic. They can see and feel things that others can't. They can communicate with spirits, sense future events, or feel the energy of a place. While this may seem like a rare gift for you, it is a heightened version of a natural capacity. You may not be a professional medium, but you are a spiritual gateway in your own life. You are the one who intuitively knows when a loved one is in trouble, or who can walk into a new home and instantly sense the energy of the space. This is your gift, and it is a powerful one. However, the shadow side of this is that your role as a spiritual gateway can become confusing and even frightening. You may have visions or dreams that you don't understand. You may feel like you are going crazy or that you are too open to other people's energies. You may fear your own gifts and try to shut them down, which can lead to anxiety, depression, or a feeling of being unmoored. When you resist your role as a spiritual gateway, you are resisting your own soul's purpose. The spiritual work is to learn to manage your gifts, not to deny them. This means creating a conscious practice of discernment. You can ask for divine guidance to come through in a way that is clear and understandable. You can set boundaries so you are not open to every single energy you encounter. You can learn to trust your intuition, but also to ground yourself so you can distinguish between a divine message and a random thought. Your goal is not to be a passive receiver of information, but an active co-creator with the universe. So, here, a thought-provoking question for you to consider. In what ways are you already acting as a spiritual gateway, and how can you more consciously honor that role? That role as a spiritual gateway is a powerful one, and it's particularly amplified when you consider the transformative interplay between your two planetary rulers. Neptune, ruler of dreams, illusions, and Pluto, ruler of transformation, death, and rebirth. While Pluto isn't a modern ruler of Pisces, its influence is deeply felt in the spiritual work of every individual, and for you, it's intense. Transformative energy often works hand in hand with Neptune's ethereal nature. You see, Neptune dissolves the old, and Pluto makes sure it never returns. This powerful dance can feel like a spiritual roller coaster, as you are constantly being asked to let go of old identities and embrace profound endings and new beginnings. The spiritual insight here is that you are uniquely equipped to navigate these transformative cycles. You are a master of surrender and dissolution, and while other signs may cling to the past, you are more likely to let go and flow with the current of change. This is a profound gift. When a relationship ends, a job is lost, or a major life chapter closes, you don't just feel the sadness, you feel the spiritual lesson. You understand that every ending is an opportunity for a new beginning, a chance to shed an old skin and emerge as a more authentic version of yourself. A relatable example of this is a person who goes through a major life change, like a cross-country move or a divorce. For many, this would be a period of immense grief and resistance, but a Piscean in a healthy state can see it as a spiritual pilgrimage. They can feel the sadness, but they also feel a sense of excitement and possibility. They can let go of the past with grace and trust that the universe is leading them towards something new and better. This is the Pluto-Neptune dance in action, the death of the old self to make way for the rebirth of a more evolved one. However, the shadow side of this is that this transformative process can feel chaotic and overwhelming. You may feel like your life is constantly in flux, and you may find it difficult to anchor yourself. This can lead to a fear of change and a resistance to letting go. You might cling to old relationships, old habits, or old identities long after they have served their purpose, not because you truly want them, but because you are afraid of the unknown. This can lead to a state of stagnation where you are neither here nor there, but simply floating in a state of limbo. This is where your spiritual gifts can become a liability, because you are using your natural ability to dissolve boundaries to avoid unnecessary transformation. The spiritual work is to consciously engage with this process. When you feel a wave of change coming, instead of resisting it, try to lean into it. Trust that the universe is clearing a path for you, even if it feels uncomfortable. You can ask yourself, what is this change trying to teach me? And what is this situation preparing me for? By approaching transformation with curiosity and faith, you can turn a chaotic period of your life into a spiritual rite of passage. So, here, S, a thought-provoking question for you to consider. What is one major ending or new beginning you are currently facing, and how can you surrender to it with grace? That process of transformation is something that requires a very specific skill for a Pisces, and it's one that can be difficult to master. Discernment as a spiritual practice, because you are a natural conduit for information from so many sources: your intuition, the collective, your dreams, and others. Emotions. It can be incredibly challenging to tell the difference between a genuine spiritual insight and an illusory fantasy or someone else's projection. The spiritual insight here is that true spiritual mastery for a Pisces is not about being open to everything. It's about being able to choose what you let in. You see, your psychic sensitivity is a gift, but without discernment, it can become a liability. You might receive a message in a dream and believe it's a divine sign, when it's really just your subconscious mind working through an old fear. You might feel a strong pull toward a new project and believe it's your higher self guiding you, when it's really just an emotional impulse born from a desire for an escape. The world is full of energies, and not all of them are for you. The spiritual work is to learn how to be a discerning filter, not just an open vessel. A relatable example of this is the person who is constantly seeking validation from psychics or tarot card readers. They'll go from one to another, hoping for a message that confirms what they already want to hear. This isn't a search for spiritual truth. It's a search for a justification for an ego-driven desire. They are outsourcing their discernment to others, instead of trusting their own inner voice. For a Pisces, this can be a particular trap, because you are so open to receiving information from others. You might believe someone's advice is a divine message just because you are so open to receiving it. The shadow side of this is that a lack of discernment can lead to a state of spiritual confusion and even self-deception. You can convince yourself of a reality that doesn't exist, and you can make decisions based on fantasies instead of facts. This can lead to disappointment, regret, and a feeling that you can't trust your own judgment. When you can't trust yourself, you will always be at the mercy of others' opinions and energies. The spiritual work is to consciously build your capacity for discernment. You can do this by asking yourself a few simple questions when you receive a message or feel a strong impulse. Does this feel expansive or constrictive? A genuine spiritual message will always feel expansive. Even if it's challenging, it will feel like it's opening you up to more possibilities. A message from the ego or from an illusion will feel constrictive, like it's forcing you into a corner. Does this feel loving or fearful? A genuine spiritual message will always be rooted in love. It will not be manipulative or based on fear. And finally, does this lead to a better version of myself? A genuine spiritual message will always guide you toward your highest good. By asking yourself these questions, you are training your intuitive muscle and building a stronger relationship with your own truth. So, here's a thought-provoking question for you to consider. What is one area of your life where you've been outsourcing your discernment to others? And what would it look like to reclaim that power for yourself? That process of discerning between genuine insight and illusion brings us to a powerful spiritual practice that is essential for your well-being: the role of forgiveness. Forgiveness is a core spiritual principle for every person, but for a Pisces, it is particularly liberating. You are a soul that feels everything so deeply: the joy, the love, and the pain. And when you hold on to a hurt, it's not just a memory. It's an energetic weight that you carry in your body. It's a heavy, stagnant energy that blocks your natural flow and keeps you from being a clear channel for love and light. The spiritual insight here is that forgiveness is not about condoning someone's behavior or letting them off the hook. It's about releasing yourself from the burden of resentment and anger. It's an act of self-love. You are saying, I refuse to let someone else's actions continue to poison my soul. When you forgive, you are not doing it for them. You are doing it for you. You are cutting the energetic cord that ties you to the past, and you are creating the space for more peace and joy in your life. Consider the real-world example of someone who is holding a grudge against a family member who hurt them years ago. Every time they think of that person, they feel a wave of anger and resentment. This anger isn't hurting the other person. It's hurting them. It's raising their blood pressure, causing them stress, and keeping them from being fully present in their own life. For a Pisces, this is even more critical, because that negative energy doesn't just stay in their head. It gets absorbed into their entire being. Forgiveness, in this case, is not just a mental act. It's an energetic cleansing. The shadow side of this is that your natural tendency toward empathy and compassion can sometimes lead you to forgive too easily, especially when you haven't processed your own hurt. This is what we call premature forgiveness. You might say, "It's okay," or "I forgive you," when a part of you is still deeply wounded. This is not genuine forgiveness. It's a way of avoiding the difficult process of confronting your own pain. You do this because you don't want to feel the anger or the sadness, but when you suppress those emotions, they don't go away. They just fester. and they will eventually come out in a more damaging way. The spiritual work is to learn to forgive with integrity. This means giving yourself permission to feel your emotions fully and completely: the anger, the sadness, the disappointment. Before you attempt to release them, you can journal about your feelings, talk to a trusted friend, or scream into a pillow. Do whatever you need to do to process your hurt in a healthy way. And then, when you feel ready, you can make a conscious choice to release the resentment. You can say, "I choose to forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to be free." This is a powerful act of self-love that will help you dissolve the karma that is keeping you stuck. So, here's a thought-provoking question for you to consider. Is there someone you need to genuinely forgive? Not for them, but for you. That process of forgiveness is a way of releasing yourself from a personal burden. But as a Pisces, your spiritual work is also to learn how to hold space for a collective burden, the shadow of the world. You, with your open heart and your permeable energy, are uniquely equipped to sense the collective pain, suffering, and darkness of humanity. This isn't just about feeling a wave of sadness after a news report. It's about intuitively knowing the spiritual wounds that the world is carrying. This is a profound and sacred role, and it's essential for you to do it without becoming overwhelmed. The spiritual insight here is that you are not meant to heal the world's pain on your own. You are meant to be a conscious witness to it. You are a mirror for the collective, reflecting its beauty and its shadow so that it can see itself more clearly. This is a crucial part of your service. Your empathy allows you to hold space for the voiceless, the forgotten, and the suffering. This is why you are so drawn to causes that involve social justice, humanitarian aid, or environmental protection. Your soul understands that these issues are not just political or economic. They are spiritual wounds that need to be acknowledged and healed. A real-world example of this is a person who works in a hospice. They are constantly in the presence of death, grief, and suffering. They don't try to fix it or to save the people they are with. They simply show up, hold a hand, and offer a loving presence. They are a conscious witness to a universal human experience. This is a deeply Piscean act, a way of holding space for the shadow of the world without being consumed by it. They have learned to offer their love and their presence without taking on the burden. They have learned to be a channel, not a container. The shadow side of this is that your natural tendency is to take on too much. You may feel a deep sense of guilt or responsibility for the world's problems, and you may believe it's your job to solve them all. This can lead to a state of constant anxiety, hopelessness, and despair. You might feel like you're drowning in a sea of suffering, and you may retreat into escapism to numb the pain. When you do this, you are not being a conscious witness. You are being a victim of the collective. The spiritual work is to find a way to honor your sensitivity without allowing it to overwhelm you. You can do this by creating a conscious practice of energetic hygiene. This might look like a daily meditation where you visualize yourself surrounded by a protective shield of light. You can also practice setting boundaries with the news and social media, allowing yourself to be informed without being consumed. And finally, you can offer your prayers, your love, and your compassionate presence to the world without feeling responsible for its problems. You can say, "I am a loving witness to the pain of the world, and I offer my light to its healing." This is a powerful act of service that will not only help the world but also help you. So, here's a thought-provoking question for you to consider. How can you consciously honor the shadow of the world without allowing it to become your own? That practice of being a conscious witness to the world's pain and establishing energetic boundaries is a profound act of self-love. And it brings us to a crucial spiritual principle for you: creating sacred boundaries. For a soul that feels a natural urge to dissolve, a boundary can feel like a contradiction. It feels like a form of separation, a rejection of the interconnectedness you hold so dear. But the spiritual insight here is that a boundary isn't a wall, it's a sacred space. It's a way of defining what is yours and what isn't, not to separate yourself from others, but to keep your vessel full so you can continue to give from a place of abundance rather than from a place of depletion. Think of it like a beautiful, clear glass. You can use this glass to pour water for others, to give them a drink and to nourish them. But if you never refill your own glass, you will eventually have nothing left to give. The spiritual work is to honor your own needs first, not out of selfishness, but out of a deep sense of self-respect. When you say no to something that drains you, you are not saying no to the other person. You are saying yes to yourself. You are telling the universe, "I honor my energy, and I will protect it so I can continue to be a source of love and light in the world." A relatable example of this is the person who feels obligated to attend every social event they re-invited to, even when they're exhausted or would rather be at home. They feel guilty saying no, so they show up, and they are not fully present. They are not enjoying themselves, and they are not adding to the energy of the group. In this case, saying no would have been the more loving act for themselves and for others. For a Pisces, this is even more critical because you are so prone to taking on other people's expectations and needs. You can easily mistake someone else's desire for a social outing as a sign that you should go, even when your soul is screaming for rest. The shadow side of this is that you may use boundaries as a passive-aggressive way to punish others or to retreat into isolation. You might suddenly become distant, give the silent treatment, or simply disappear from a relationship without explanation. This is not a healthy boundary. It's a form of emotional control and avoidance. A genuine boundary is always rooted in self-love and is communicated with clarity and respect. It's not a ghosting. It's a gentle, I need to take care of myself right now, but I'll check in with you later. The spiritual work is to learn to communicate your boundaries with grace and confidence. You can start with small steps. You can say, I'm not feeling up to a big social gathering tonight, but I'd love to grab a coffee next week. Or, I'm not in a place to talk about this right now, but I appreciate you sharing. These small acts of communication are a way of honoring your needs while also honoring the other person. They are a way of creating a sacred space around yourself, a space where you can feel safe, restored, and whole. So, here's a thought-provoking question for you to consider. What is one boundary, big or small, that you need to set in your life right now? That ability to set sacred boundaries is a beautiful practice, and it brings us to the final, most crucial spiritual principle for a Pisces. Integration is the real spiritual goal. So much of the spiritual world talks about ascension or enlightenment, as if the goal is to float away from this physical plane and dissolve into the ether. But for a Pisces, true spirituality isn't about escaping reality. It's about embracing it and infusing it with your divine, fluid nature. The spiritual insight here is that you are not here to leave your body. You are here to be a spiritual being having a human experience, and your job is to integrate the two. You see, you can have a powerful meditation, receive profound messages from the universe, and feel a sense of oneness with all life. But if you can't bring that feeling back into your daily life, into your relationships, your work, and your responsibilities, then it's just a temporary escape. The spiritual work is to become a bridge between the two worlds, to bring your beautiful, ethereal energy down to earth and to let it color everything you do. This is the difference between a person who is spiritual and a person who is integrated. The former is a beautiful dreamer. The latter is a powerful co-creator. Think of a real-world example of an artist who doesn't just paint a picture. They create a masterpiece that changes the way people see the world. They have integrated their spiritual insights, their emotions, and their creative energy into a physical form that can be shared with others. Or think of a healer who doesn't just offer a moment of peace. They offer a lasting transformation. Because they are helping their clients integrate their spiritual lessons into their everyday life, this is the goal for you too. Your purpose is not just to feel the spiritual truths, it's to embody them. The shadow side of this is that you may resist this process of integration. It can feel like you are being asked to cage your wild, watery spirit. You may feel like the mundane world is too harsh or too restrictive for your delicate nature. You may feel like you are selling out your spiritual beliefs by having a job, paying bills, or engaging with a world that can feel so unspiritual. But remember, the universe put you here for a reason. You are a divine being in a human body, and your purpose is to bring a little piece of heaven down to earth. The spiritual work is to find a way to honor both parts of yourself, the wild, watery dreamer and the grounded, responsible human. This means creating a life that is in alignment with your soul's purpose. A life where you are not just surviving, but thriving. It means finding a job that allows you to express your creativity and your compassion. It means surrounding yourself with people who honor both your spiritual and your human nature. It means turning every single mundane act into a spiritual practice. So, here's a thought-provoking question for you to consider. In what ways are you keeping your spiritual self and your human self separate, and what is one small step you can take today to integrate the two? That final act of integration is the ultimate spiritual goal for you, and it brings us to a powerful cosmic call to fully embrace the paradox of who you are. You are both the sacred and the profane, the boundless ocean and the individual fish. You are the dreamer and the doer, the compassionate soul and the human with boundaries. To deny any part of yourself is to deny your true power and your unique role in the cosmic tapestry. The spiritual insight here is that you are not a mistake. You are a masterpiece, and every single part of your nature, even the parts you might consider flaws, is a beautiful and necessary part of your journey. You see, for so long, you may have felt like you were too much, too sensitive, too emotional, too dreamy, too soft. But I want you to reframe that thought right now. Your sensitivity is a sign of your immense capacity for love. Your emotions are your intuitive compass, a way of feeling the world in a way others can't. Your dreams are the blueprint for a better future. Your softness is what makes you such a powerful healer. The world doesn't need you to be hard. It needs you to be exactly who you are, because your unique energy is what's needed to soften the edges of a world that is too often hard and unyielding. A real-world example of this is a person who has a seemingly normal life. They have a job, a family, and daily responsibilities, but they live it with a profound sense of grace and compassion. They don't have to be a spiritual guru on a mountaintop. They are simply a person who has integrated their spiritual nature into their everyday life. They are the person who offers a listening ear to a stranger, who brings light to a difficult situation, or who simply moves through the world with a sense of peace. This is the ultimate goal for you, to be a walking, breathing testament to the power of a heart-centered life. The shadow side of this is to believe that you have to be perfect in order to be spiritual. This is the greatest illusion of all. The universe doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be you. It needs you to stumble, to make mistakes, to get lost in your dreams, and to find your way back. It needs you to be human. When you accept your own imperfections, you give others permission to accept theirs. When you love yourself, you teach the world how to love itself. The spiritual work is to let go of the need for perfection and to embrace your wholeness. It is to look at your reflection and to say, I see you. I see all of you. The dreamer, the healer, the escapist, the human. And I love you completely. This is the ultimate act of surrender, the ultimate act of self-love, and the ultimate act of spiritual mastery. You are here to remind us all that we are not separate. We are all part of the same cosmic ocean, and we are all needed exactly as we are. So, we've come to the end of our journey, and I hope you found a new way to look at your beautiful, complex Piscean nature. We've talked about the paradox of being both a dreamer and a master of your reality, about the power of your compassion and the necessity of your boundaries. We've explored the importance of grounding, the sacredness of creativity, and the power of forgiveness. The key takeaway, the one thought I want you to carry with you for the rest of the week, is this. True spirituality isn't about escaping your life. It's about infusing it with your divine light. It's about bringing your boundless, compassionate, and intuitive nature down to earth, and using it to create a life that is both beautiful and real. Keep trusting your intuition, keep setting your sacred boundaries, and keep dreaming with your feet on the ground. You are a powerful co-creator, and the world needs your magic. That's all for today. Keep trusting your intuition, and I'll see you in the next one.